The 18th annual Boao Forum for Asia kicked off this week. This year's forum has attracted representatives from 60 countries and regions, primarily in Asia, to address common concerns like the slowdown in the region's economy. But it has also come to be seen as a barometer of how effectively China, home of the world's second largest economy, is reforming its policies and fulfilling its promises. At last year's forum, Chinese President Xi Jinping made sweeping pledges in order to attract more foreign investment and to further benefit its trading partners. 1 year on, has the Chinese government followed through? Where do we see the most progress? What areas are possibly lagging behind and why? Joining me for the discussion in the Beijing studio is Gong, a professor from the University of Foreign International Business and Trade, and from Shanghai, CG BNP Paribas, head of global markets of Greater China. Gentlemen, welcome to the point. Professor Gong, let me go to you first. Why does the Boao Forum matter for us, for our readers, our viewers? I mean, it takes place every year. People go there and talk, and why should people care about it?
Well, Boao Forum is modeled after the World Economic Forum, which is also called the Asians Davos Forum. As we all know, the world economic epicenter is moving to the Asian Pacific region, and China being the second largest economy in the world, it's a very important regional area. So I think, with a forum which is very much Asian-centric, focus on discussing things relevant to Asia, focus on things related to Asian regional integration. It's very important for many countries around this area.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this year is particularly interesting and important because, as I mentioned, last year President Xi Jinping was there and gave a very important speech where he outlined some of the key areas where China wanted to further open up economy. Let's not forget that the United States was launching this trade war against China. So in order to continue China's reform and opening up, and also possibly to assuage some of the fears and some of the concerns from its U.S. trading partners, President Xi outlined these 4 key areas, namely market access, investment environment, intellectual property right protection, and expanding imports. So 1 year later, without going into these 4 specific areas yet, Professor Gong, what score will you give to the Chinese government effort in delivering on these promises?
I think overall the Chinese government has been making good on its promises, especially with respect to the 4 areas President Xi talked about in last year's Boao speech. For example, the market access. As we know, we've already opened up several markets, the financial market. I want to talk about the automobile industry. It's a prime example of opening up. We have eliminated the equity share restriction in the automobile industry. BMW is the first company that has been enjoying this elimination. It has increased its share in the BMW joint venture operation in Shenyang, city of Shenyang, from 50% to 75%. We've also allowed 1 major foreign automobile company to be operating here in China, city of Shanghai, wholly owned company from Tesla. It just started operation a few days ago. So we have, these are good examples for market access. In the area of investment environment.
Before we move on, I know it's very comprehensive, and under each of these lists there are a couple of things that were being mentioned. Mr. Lai, let me go to you in Shanghai. Tell me, what was the biggest difference to you for your business since President Xi spoke last year?
I think the biggest changes is the market access is opening, and this is what the President Xi has been talking about, one of which is the majority owned for the foreign security company into China. But beyond that, you can see many of the reforms happening on the stock market and the bond market. There are many measures of liberalizing the assets into the domestic bond market and the equity market. These are important because when you look at China's foreign investment into the Chinese bond market or equity market, they are still a very small percentage. They are less than 2 or 3%. When comparing in the neighboring countries or areas, sometimes the percentage can go up to 30 or 35%. So this is important. The opening is important. It will have a significant impact. The other thing is also important is the supply side of the reform. Actually, it will open up the way for the foreign institution to participate in China in many of the different
you say,
special
okay,
lending
please allow me
entities.
to interrupt you there. You say it will open up. Does it mean that China hasn't opened up yet? Or was it something that President Xi announced last year and we are seeing steps being taken towards that direction? Mr. Lai.
You are right. What I'm saying is the opening up has been accelerating for the last 1 year. But the majority ownership is one particular deal that has been announced last year. So you have a combination of the speeding up and also the new opening. As far as I'm concerned, the supply side reform is the new opening. They are inviting more and more foreign investors to invest in not only the obvious item of the majority-owned security company or going into the bond market or security company, bond market or the security market, but we are now talking about a good example would be the ING setting up the new joint venture with the Bank of Beijing for the direct market, for the direct banking.
Okay.
So these are all the things that has been happening in the last 1 year.
Okay. Professor Gong, put all of this into context for us here. What are we looking at? I mean, we are looking at the world's second largest economy, and we're looking at these swift accelerating measures. Against what circumstances has China been able to do that? Overcoming what kind of obstacles? We have stagnation or slowing down of the economy. We have special interest groups, right, that are standing in the way of further reform and opening up. What are some of these?
I think the government understands that this is the general direction this country have to move towards. And it's just that we haven't been quite, fast enough to introduce these reforms. But I think the event last year, starting from, the Trump administration introducing a trade friction with China, really accelerates this process. We now understand that we can't, keep the thing as old way of doing things anymore. This country has to open up. We have to be deeply, deeply integrated into the world economy. We cannot export our way to prosperity. We have to be maintaining a more of a balanced trade picture. So all these forces combined are driving the move towards that direction, and also overcoming the internal resistance from various forces, I think.
Yeah. Mr. Lai, I understand you must have seen the China picture for a considerable long time here. What have you observed as some of the factors which have allowed the change to take place at a much faster pace? And then please also tell us, where do you think things need to still pick up even more?
As a matter of fact, there is underlying things about the changes in China. When you really look at it, the Chinese, until very recently, has a value proposition to the rest of the world, that being the factory of the world. But that type of the operating model has been changed. We are now much more domestic-centric, so that's why we are changing into opening up the market, and we are choosing the quality over quantity. And this is good for the domestic consumer and also the everyday people. There is a rationale behind all of these changes. Sometimes we need to better explain to the people outside, because sometimes it would be very difficult for people to comprehend why China want to open up this, seemingly on the surface, having a value proposition that is helping only the foreigner. But the truth is, like Professor Gong said, the opening up is actually to everyone's benefits, and more so to the domestic people. And this is the true effort that has been put up by the government.
Okay,
and the people need to, outside China, need to understand that.
Yeah, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. And people are saying, look, you have taken some steps probably. You have enacted new laws or consolidated old laws, making them into new ones, for instance, the foreign investment law. But people say, this is too vague. There's no detail. So even if you have taken steps, but they're not really substantive steps, you can't really, take any pride in there. Professor Gong, how do you look at that?
Well, I think we are referring to the Foreign Investment Act. I think there's a general background behind the very quick passage of this piece of legislation. we really sort of hurry through this in coordinates with the two sessions, because the lawmakers are in session. We need to pass this law, and we can't afford waiting for another year. And if we're talking about all aspects of opening up, there are many, many details, and it's, in my opinion, it's almost impossible to put down everything in writing and put everything into this piece of legislation. It's just impossible. I mean, there's you can't cover all grounds just by putting everything in the statutes. So inevitably, there will be those administrative guidelines in the spirit of the law coming from various ministries. So I think the foreign investors don't really have to be worried too much about that this piece of legislation is sort of vague, or it's at a high level, it's in principle, not many details in it. But I think, based on the spirit of this law, there will be these, guidelines coming out, and they have plenty of time. They have plenty of opportunities to go through with the relevant government agencies and voice their own opinions. I think the channel of communication is right there.
Okay, Mr. Lai, the new law, does that reasonably answer the questions that people like you, the foreign investors who are concerned about intellectual property rights, about investment equality, does this new law answer sufficiently these questions, or do you think that there is still a lot more to be done there?
I actually concur with what Professor Gong has just mentioned. I think he answered most of the question and also the issue that foreign investors are looking for. Again, there is a complexity about the development of this law and also the environment. And often people underestimate the complexity and the sheer size of this country. And we need more precedent, we need more cases to make it a better one. But I think the true intention is there, and there is always a bit of the disagreement over the time frame. But this time frame is only natural given the size of the country and also the issue of the complexity that we are facing.
Okay,
but in principle, everything has been addressed.
I understand. Actually, we did that discussion, and I remember there were comments from outside world saying, look, China is racing through this law. I say, so what is the perfect pace? Tell me about that. Anyway, I have to leave it there. Many thanks to my two guests, Gong Lai, CEO of BNP Paribas China Limited, and Gong, Professor of Economics at the University of International Business and Economics.